After Yi Futian won in that battle of empty realms years ago, Li Yao broke the rules of engagement and attempted to kill him. After Yi Futian won in that battle of empty realms years ago, Li Yao broke the rules of engagement and attempted to kill him. The relationship between the realms of Emperor Xia and Emperor Li quickly took a turn for the worse after that, with conflicts occurring regularly. As such, order at Empty Realm was broken, with the realm currently being split into 3 factions. 3 imperial realms remained in a standoff and battles erupted now and then. All of them competed for the realm's resources. At present, all 3 factions had mighty ones carving out their territories. In Emperor Xia's service, the army of Dou was in charge, with the holiness of Nirvana taking command. The leader was none other than Lu Yu, who had been protecting Princess Xia Qingyuan for quite some time. There was also a holiness of Nirvana from Emperor Li's realm present, King White of the 4 Kings. The holiness of Nirvana from Demon Peacock Emperor's realm was a monster. It was a protector at the Emperor's side, and was known as a king in the Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. It had the title of Idol King, and possessed formidable powers. All 3 factions had fought skirmishes against each other time and again, but they had never gone too far. That was because Empty Realm was directly connected to the 3 imperial realms. All-out wars could have broken out if they were not careful, and all factions could have had people from their respective realms coming to take charge of things. As such, Yi Futian also chose to go to Empty Realm only after King Tiandao and the Prince Regent emerged to intercept the Swordmaster of Lihan. He wanted to confirm that enemy officers at the very top had been deployed. If he were to invade Empty Realm without confirming that, there was the possibility of ambush. King Tiandao and the Prince Regent stood at the very pinnacle of Dali dynasty. If they were absent, Yi Futian would still have been able to handle any ambush he ran into. At that moment, a group of people descended from above Emperor Xia's city of Empty Realm. It was none other than Yi Futian's party, and Xia Qingyuan was with them as well. Lu Yu and the sacred general of Dou took to the air and called, "Princess." Lu Yu had served as Xia Qingyuan's bodyguard for many years, so it could be said that he was very familiar with her. Xia Qingyuan nodded slightly, and both of them turned to look at Yi Futian. Lu Yu met him many times before, yet it was the first time for the sacred general of Dou. The general eyed the genius whose name became known throughout Emperor Xia's realm. He had heard that it was this young man who led this war. Not even the sacred general of Tian, the top general of the 8 armies, had commanded such authority before. But then again, he heard that it was Yi Futian who invited the Swordmaster of Lihan and many other legendary figures to participate in the war. Senior Sacred General, Yi Futian addressed them with his hands cupped. "Sir Yi." Lu Yi nodded. "Your reputation precedes you, Sir Yi. I finally get to meet the man in person." The sacred general of Dou had a brimming aura, yet he had the look and bearing of a scholar, appearing well-mannered and elegant. However, there was no mistaking his extremely formidable combat prowess. He was already at the pinnacle of unblemished saint level. "You're too kind, sacred general. How are things here now?" Yi Futian asked. "Quiet. There is no movement from Dali's side, and the Demon Peacock Emperor's realm seemed like they're just watching the world burn. They probably won't get involved," the sacred general of Dou said. "That won't be it." Yi Futian shook his head. The sacred general of Dou looked at Yi Futian and asked, "Do you think that they would choose to ally with Emperor Li's realm and take us on instead?" Emperor Xia's realm was, at the moment, the most powerful among the 3. The ones from Demon Peacock Emperor's realm might have allied with Emperor Li's realm out of concern that Emperor Xia's realm would have taken the chance to seize permanent control of Empty Realm. "Would you mind going to Peacock City with me for a bit?" Yi Futian smiled and asked. The sacred general of Dou looked rather puzzled, wondering why Yi Futian would have wanted to do that. He was unable to read the young man's intentions. "Very well." The sacred general of Dou nodded, and the group departed. It did not take them long to arrive at the Empty Realm base of operations for Demon Peacock Emperor's realm, called Peacock City. The group barged into Peacock City right away, landing at the central area. A stout man who emanated brimming might sat before them. His form looked mighty and larger than most. His eyes were very huge, and his nose was unusually long. Those eyes had extremely overbearing pressure emanating from them as they gazed at Yi Futian. That being was none other than the idol king of Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. As Yi Futian felt the weight of his vague aura, it seemed the aura was capable of crushing him to death on its own. Even the sacred general of Do looked rather alerted. "I'm Yi Futian. Pleased to meet you, idol king." Yi Futian bowed slightly to show his respect. "You are indeed the cream of the crop, city lord Yi. No wonder the princess spoke so highly of you." The pressure from the idol king dispersed, and he laughed heartily. The sacred general of Do was baffled. He knew of Yi Futian's current status within Emperor Xia's realm, and about his rather peculiar relationship with the princess. Yet it seemed Yi Futian had a similar relationship with the princess of Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. He wondered how that happened. Especially because some years ago, Yi Futian had gotten on the bad side of Kong Xian during the Battle of Empty Realm. The sacred general of Do then looked at Yi Futian's face, wondering if Yi Futian could do as he pleased because of his handsome features. "That's quite flattering, senior. Princess Kong Xian has superb talents and she will be quite the demon empress herself in the future." Yi Futian smiled and replied. The Black Wind Condor was still training at Demon Peacock Emperor's realm, and he had long reconciled with her. The relationship between the two was quite amicable. If he were to have Kong Xian on his side, then Dali could have been effectively kicked out of the realm. Then the realm would have been subjected to joint rule by Emperor Xia's realm and Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. In Kong Xian's perspective, it all had to do with her coming to terms with Yi Futian, and how the bird was training under a super monster as well. There was also the factor of Yi Futian's extraordinary performance in Crimson Dragon realm at play. As such, Demon Peacock Emperor's realm would have naturally leaned towards having a good relationship with him, instead of making an enemy out of him. The joint rule of Empty Realm would have been beneficial to both while causing no harm. As for Dali, Yi Futian intended to take them on, and Dali dynasty was in a ditch themselves. They could not have so much as even an opinion, let alone getting on the bad side of Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. As such, after receiving Yi Futian's invitation, Kong Xian had returned to Demon Peacock Emperor's realm right away to report. She also relayed the news to Empty Realm through the Black Wind Condor, who enabled Kong Xian to converse directly with Yi Futian. All of that culminated with this meeting between Yi Futian and the Idol King at Peacock City. Senior, it was Emperor Li's realm who broke the rules of the pact between the three realms back in the Battle of Empty Realm. We should have kicked them out of Empty Realm back then, and the realm should be jointly ruled by us, Yi Futian continued. That was the agreement he reached with Kong Xian. Well said. The Idol King nodded. Emperor Li's realm was the one who broke the rules. That is how we should deal with them. The sacred general of Do, who was at his side, was completely dumbfounded. Demon Peacock Emperor's realm had indeed picked a side, but it was their side that they allied with. How could Dali dynasty fight this anymore? I'll head back to Emperor Xia's city and rally our forces. We'll expel Emperor Li's realm once and for all. Yi Futian cupped his hands before excusing himself. The Idol King looked at Yi Futian's back as he left, recalling how Princess Kong Xian spoke very highly of him. She claimed that his future would not be at either Emperor Xia's realm or Emperor Li's. The army of Dali dynasty was stationed at Emperor Li's city. Empty Realm had rich deposits of sacred spirit stones, and they were all imbued with Empty Realm attributes. Furthermore, the realm was connected to 3 imperial realms, so Dali dynasty would not have given up the place easily. At that moment, King White sensed a looming threat around him. The ones from Demon Peacock Emperor's realm are here, huh? He frowned hard. A mighty one whose aura brimmed stood at King White's side. It was someone whom Yi Futian had met quite a lot of times. Chao Kong, a figure of utmost importance among the demonic clan. There were many mighty ones from the demonic clan right behind him. King White was not the only one in charge at Empty Realm. The demonic clan's mighty ones were there as well. It was apparent that they believed Empty Realm to be important. Extremely formidable pressure of the Great Path rained down on them, and 2 armies came from afar. King White saw the silver-haired young man at the forefront, and felt rather complicated. The imperial advisor had taken that young man to be his student back then, and Emperor Li had even wanted to marry off one of the princesses to him. It was quite a pity that he and Li Yao could not have gotten along, given how Li Yao had killed his wife. If the imperial advisor had not gotten into trouble, they would not have been on the defense in this conflict. The imperial advisor alone could have taken on armies. Yin Yuan, the eldest student of the imperial advisor, had advanced to become a holiness of nirvana as well. However, it was done now, and there was no turning back. No one would have expected Yi Futian to have grown so much in such a short period. He had already brought a group of holiness of nirvanas to Emperor Xia's realm. Idol King, Dali Dynasty and Demon Peacock Emperor's realm had shared amicable relations. Is Demon Peacock Emperor's realm wanting to get involved in the conflict with Emperor Xia's realm and Emperor Li's realm now? King White asked as he looked at the Idol King from afar. We're not interested in the squabbles between Emperor Li and Emperor Xia, but Li Yao broke the rules in the Battle of Empty Realm all those years ago, and that brought on the current instability. Without those old rules, fighting has continued for the past several years, and the order was disrupted, the Idol King said. Since it was you of Emperor Li's realm who broke the rules, then we shall end the chaos with you. Emperor Li's realm shall leave Empty Realm. King White stared straight ahead. Emperor Li's city was one step behind him. It was obvious that the intrusion of Emperor Xia's realm into Empty Realm was meant to uproot Dali Dynasty from the realm itself. Take Yi Futian out, Chao Kong said telepathically to King White. Those holiness of nirvanas served Yi Futian, so the fighting would end if Yi Futian were taken out of the picture. Your reputation precedes you, Idol King, and I shall now see what you're made of. King White disappeared from where he stood. However, he did not charge at the Idol King. Instead, he headed straight for Yi Futian's location. Chao Kong made his move as well. He stepped out and demonic might swept all over as he headed straight for Yi Futian. The two holiness of nirvanas targeted Yi Futian right away. Boom! A loud rumble was heard. The sky shook as if it had been pinned down. All of the mighty ones present felt as if a divine mountain had landed on them, intending to crush them outright. The Idol King threw a single punch at King White's body, making it as he was about to crush his surroundings. Boom! Another rumble was heard and King White's advance was blocked. The Idol King stepped out and said, "If you tell me, I'll happily oblige." Fighting erupted right beside them almost at the very same moment. Chao Kong threw a demonic palm print, which clashed with Lu Yu. His immense power threw Lu Yu back, and he continued moving forward. People who trained in demonic ways were extremely overbearing. He headed straight for Yi Futian after throwing Lu Yu back, yet he saw a shadow like a war god of flames standing tall before Yi Futian. That was the Chonglu battle form taken by Wu Yong. Yi Futian stood right behind Wu Yong, whose body seemed to have turned into a scorching sun. The terrifying will of the Great Path surged inside Wu Yong's body, enhancing his power and cranking his battle form up to the 12th layer. Chao Kong had been the main force when Li Yao intended to kill Yi Futian in Empty Realm. Yaya was badly injured and Wuxian almost ended up killed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. At the time of the Battle of Qinya City in the Crimson Dragon Realm, Wu Yong had used Yi Futian to exert incredible fighting power and shake several nirvana figures with his performance. At the time of the Battle of Qinya City in the Crimson Dragon Realm, Wu Yong had used Yi Futian to exert incredible fighting power and shake several nirvana figures with his performance. The strength within Yi Futian could directly increase Wu Yong's strength, allowing him, who had just stepped into the nirvana realm, to appear as if he was at the peak of this state. Thus, while the leader of the Zhong clan could only reach the 11th phase of Zhonglo battle form, Wu Yong could reach the 12th phase, creating a towering, immense flaming battle form like a sun god of war. Wu Yong's eyes were as bright as the sun. Once again he experienced that breath. It was an unspeakable power, just like the last time. When Yi Futian lent him the way, he would feel as if he had almost touched an even stronger way, like the source of the Great Path. His physical body was like the source of all flames, swallowing up the fire of the heavens, thus strengthening himself. He only personally experienced this feeling among the remaining 7 leaders out of the 9 major tribes. He also understood that this must have been related to what Futian had obtained from the relics of Emperor Kwa. Wu Yong naturally would not reveal this. He knew very well that because of his original decision, now Futian trusted him the most. On the other side, Cao Kong was incredibly fast. When the Zhonglo battle form finished being cast, Cao Kong had already arrived. His target was Futian, and naturally, he would take Futian down as quickly as possible. Futian was right behind Wu Yong. Mighty demonic powers swept across the heavens, and an awesome demon appeared behind Cao Kong. Demonic clouds covered the sky. They contained a terrible power to consume, trying to devour Wu Yong's flame. He grabbed directly towards Wu Yong's body. Those who cultivated in the demonic arts were experts in close-quarter combat, so he was quite fearless. The giant palm expanded wildly, turning into a vortex of a black hole. It was surrounded by endless dark, magical currents, moving toward Wu Yong's Zhonglo battle form like demonic magic chains. The demonic chains that were formed by the demonic magical currents sheltered the sky and enveloped Wu Yong's body, wanting to imprison him. The terrible dark demonic currents swallowed the flames upon Wu Yong's body. A palm of the great path descended and blasted toward Wu Yong's head, wanting to end him then and there. "Let him," Futian said to Wu Yong. Endless flames also surrounded his body. The fire spirit orb of his life palace merged into the ancient tree of the world, and branches and leaves reached out and melded into Wu Yong's body. Wu Yong's Zhonglo battle form became even hotter. Like the center of the sun, flames continued to pour into the great palm print through his battle form, even allowing the chain that grabbed him to devour the flames inside his body. He knew very well that Cao Kong could not swallow this flaming force. Sure enough, Cao Kong's face changed in an instant. The chains became crimson as blood, as did the dark demonic palm prints. The terrifying red color blended into the darkness, and even the will that was madly swallowing up the flames between heaven and earth continued to surge toward his arm. A terrible sizzling sound was heard, and the endless chain of demonic magic started burning, and the great palm print exploded under the flame. Cao Kong's eyes changed, and his body retreated. He wanted to extricate himself. The temperature of the flames on Zhonglo battle form was getting higher, and there was an illusion of divine fire in this space. It seemed as if it would completely transform it into a world of flame. Boom! Just as Cao Kong attempted to retreat, many flaming arms suddenly appeared upon the 12th phase of the Zhonglo battle form, sheltering the sky. When Cao Kong just wanted to get out of there, he saw that Lu Yu had appeared behind him. He raised his hand to blast out a great palm that struck Cao Kong back, causing him to be surrounded by flaming arms. Cao Kong's pupils contracted slightly. There were 3 Nirvana figures on the other side, and because he was eager to take down Futian, he miscalculated Wu Yong's battle power. Or rather, Wu Yong's power that was augmented by Futian. However, Cao Kong was a Nirvana-level demonic figure after all. Although he felt the oppression, he was still mentally solid. The monstrous demonic power now turned into an overbearing demonic sword, stepping out in one direction and slashing a way out, cutting off the arms that extended from the Zhonglo battle form. However, as he was about to open up a path, a strong sense of danger descended, and many solar spears fell down, piercing straight at his body. Boom! The magical power swept the world. His body seemed to have been covered by a demonic armor, both hands holding a sword, and slashed out, opening up a fissure with demonic magic. It split the void, breaking the solar spear. Sounds of roaring continued, and the towering battle form of Wu Yong came out. A sun appeared behind him, emitting infinite sun divine light of the sun. Each beam turned into a solar spear. Futian had inherited the relics of Emperor Kwa, and he now had mastered all the abilities of the 9 major tribes, and passed them on to Wu Yong. Therefore, Wu Yong had been improving over the past few years. What he mastered was not just the Zhonglo battle form of the Zhong clan, but also the abilities of the Zhu clan. The demonic sword cut through the sky and kept splitting the solar spears, but there seemed to be an inexhaustible number of solar spears. The demonic currents around Cao Kong's body were burning up, so that he felt as if he was in a solar furnace, and bore the roasting of the solar true fire. A radiant sun fell, drowning Chao Kong, carrying endless solar spears. Everything about his body was burned into infinity. Chao Kong screamed as the storm intended to devour the flames, but he found that his great path of consumption was not nearly as powerful as will of the flames. He only felt that his body was burning, and even his spirit was bearing this power. In the past, when Yi Futian led the way to Wu Yong, it was to fight against several Nirvana figures. He easily wiped out the Nirvana characters of the Chong clan. Now, Yi Futian's cultivation was even more excellent than at the beginning, and his control of internal strength was much better. Wu Yong had also progressed. So, even though Chao Kong was extremely strong, he was still suppressed with absolute certainty. He couldn't attack, couldn't escape, and was trapped in it. The army on the battlefield had begun to fight. Seeing this situation, Lu Yu turned and headed toward the other battlefields. The cultivators of the Dali dynasty were not their equal, and were overpowered. Screams were heard continuously. On the other battlefield, the idol king of the Peacock Demon realm was also an extremely very powerful figure who could suppress King White. In this battle, there wasn't even a chance for the cultivators of the Dali dynasty to get close to Yi Futian, never mind attempt to take him down. Withdraw. King White retreated and ordered his men to retreat. If they continued to fight, they feared they might be trapped and destroyed right where they were. Chao Kong! He yelled out but saw that Chao Kong was trapped. Countless flaming arms of the flaming war god attacked at the same time everywhere. With a loud sound, Chao Kong screamed angrily and was hit directly. The flames invaded his body, boiling all of his internal organs, and he spat out a mouthful of burning blood. What humiliated Chao Kong even more was that Wu Yong didn't seem to want to kill him, but wanted merely to trap him with his Zhonglo battle form, continuing to attack him. King White's look changed as he watched the scene played out. He felt the breath from Wu Yong and knew that Chao Kong probably would not be able to extricate himself from the battlefield. He cast another glance at Yi Futian, who was behind Wu Yong. His return this time would spell another disaster for Dali. Who could have thought that the person who could sway the disputes between Dali dynasty and Emperor Xia's realm would be a young man? The death of Prince Liao was nothing worth tears. Everything had started because of him. Start the matrix, withdraw. While King White retreated, he forced Lu Yu back, and as the army of Dali dynasty retreated, those who guarded the matrix now initiated the grand matrix of space. In just a moment, a brilliant beam of great path of space covered this immense land. Clearly, the other had prepared to evacuate at any time. Don't go over there. Get back. Lu Yu and Idol King also ordered. If the matrix took anyone to Dali dynasty before the army had a chance to prepare, the outcome would be very miserable. The two sides disengaged in an instant, and each returned to their own camp. A loud roar came out, and Chao Kong went berserk. Knowing that King White had ordered the retreat, one could only imagine what he was thinking. However, he still couldn't escape the absolute control. Finally, Chao Kong, this demon, had finally revealed his panic. He was slightly pale when a beam of bright light rushed into the sky. It was like opening up a great path of space. A group of figures crossed the space and disappeared, leaving Chao Kong there fighting. Bang! With another loud sound, Chao Kong was blasted down by a palm strike and hit the ground. Hot blood came out of his mouth, his clothes were also burnt, and a flaming currents now leaked from his torso. I want him alive, Yi Futian said. The demonic might on Chao Kong was powerful, and he tried to get up as another flaming palm struck him down again. Chao Kong was a giant from the Dali dynasty, their premier demonic figure with great strength, who was highly respected. In Dali dynasty, he had the respect and fear of all. But at this moment his state was miserable. His eyes were pitch black. It was as if he was on the verge of turning into a demon. He tried to get up again and again, refusing to give in. However, he was repeatedly shot down. All of his organs were burning inside. The life force inside his body was being burned up, and his breath became weaker and weaker. Finally, after a long while, Chao Kong lost his ability to resist completely, and just laid there, unable to get up. Wu Yong kept the battle form, looking down to survey the figure below. The Idol King and Lu Yu also came, looking at Chao Kong. The Idol King took notice of the desolate state of Chao Kong. After all, he was a leader of demonic magic. However, although he sympathized, he could not say anything. This was the grudge between the two major Renhuang realms. When Cao Kong first engaged Yi Futian, his ambush in the empty realm nearly made Yi Futian lose his life. No matter what Yi Futian did now, it was not excessive. Currently, Yi Futian's figure drifted down from Wu Yong, and his breath was gradually collected. He looked at Cao Kong below, and thought that he had dealt with Yaya this way once upon a time. This time, again in the empty realm, Cao Kong had wanted to ambush him with King White, thus falling into his hands. As such, he now had the first card in his hand. The existence of any nirvana plane was extremely precious to Dali dynasty. Cao Kong was the leader of the Cao clan, and now that he had fallen into his hands, Emperor Li must somewhat consider Cao Kong's fate. At Emperor Li's palace, King White came straight away to inform Emperor Li about Cao Kong. After that, Emperor Li looked up into the distance, and might of authority shrouded the entire Emperor Li's city. Empty realm was now taken away from them. The army guarding the empty realm was expelled. The Peacock Demon Emperor's realm joined forces with Yi Futian, and Cao Kong was left behind. It was the perfect picture of this war. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Emperor Li's city, inside the palace, there seemed to be dark clouds hovering over it. Emperor Li's city, inside the palace, there seemed to be dark clouds hovering over it. Princes, princesses, nobles, and other magistrates converged, and troops guarded the whole city. Under the rule of Emperor Li, the imperial advisor of Dali oversaw domestic issues, while King Tiandao dealt with outside matters. This management system rendered Dali dynasty incredibly strong and prosperous, far exceeding the neighboring Emperor Xia's realm. Therefore, many in the Dali army, and also many of the magistrates, believed that they were in a position to initiate a border war and plunder the resources of cultivation from Emperor Xia's realm, thereby expanding the power of the Dali and making Dali stronger. However, this all changed a few years ago when Yi Futian appeared in Dali dynasty. After that, because of him, the imperial advisor of Dali was admonished, and the imperial advisor's residence sat there deserted. In a few short years, the invasion of Emperor Xia's realm swept from all directions, pressuring Dali dynasty. The situation was reversed so quickly. In front of the towering golden hall of the palace, Emperor Li stood on the stairs case. People were moving below. Messengers kept coming urgently to report the military situation. His Majesty, Sword Mountain and Sun City in the southwest fell. In the northwest, Emperor Xia's army had invaded Tianluo City and Yaodu. Directly to the west, Daili Mountain and the relics of the emperor were lost. King Tiandao and the regent failed in the ambush, with many casualties, and are now retreating toward the imperial city. The messenger relayed the news in one breath, and then bowed his head on the ground, daring not to lift it. An important and strategic location in the west, in the shape of a fan, was lost successively, and even the ambush had failed. On the side of the empty realm, King White had evacuated, with Cao Kong left behind. The battle was becoming a one-sided situation. However, this situation was also expected. Under the circumstances, the opponent's cultivators of Nirvana Plane occupied the absolute advantage, while Yi Futian still brought many figures of the unblemished Saint Plane from the Crimson Dragon realm. The invasion by one realm was composed of all major top forces, and the 8 great armies. As Dali had been weakened considerably by the loss of the imperial advisor's residence. In contrast, the disparity of power was one-sided. There was silence in the palace. Many ministers were quiet, and the princes and princesses were speechless. Some of the princes and princesses present even had dealings with Yi Futian, when he was known as the 7th swordsman in Dali, whose reputation rang throughout the realm. Who would have thought that the 7th swordsman now controlled this great battle of the Renhuang realm? What are your thoughts? Emperor Li looked at everyone in the hall. It was met by more silence. In the world of cultivation, power trumped all. Their previous strategy was to retreat proactively, avoiding direct, all-out confrontation with the enemy, using a few cultivators to ambush possible points of entry. After all, the invading army of Emperor Xia's realm was scattered. King Tiandao and the Prince Regent were undoubtedly the most promising. Supposing they could ambush and destroy one army of the enemy, they could immediately support other areas of fighting. Then there was the empty realm. In addition to King White, Cao Kong was deliberately dispatched to infiltrate the Emperor Li's city in secret and deal a fatal blow if the enemy intended to make a move on the empty realm. But everyone had seen the result. Yi Futian had convinced the Demon Peacock Emperor's realm to join forces with him to attack Emperor Li's city in the empty realm, causing the capture of Cao Kong, the premier demonic figure of Dali. His Majesty, since this is already the situation, it is better to give up all the positions. I can't hold it. Is it possible to concentrate all my strength and use time differences to break through one by one? Someone suggested. There had to be a time difference with the arrival of the great army of the other side. King Tiandao and the Prince Regent originally planned to do the same, but the Swordmaster of Lihan and Yaya were the main forces defending the sword matrix. After the arrival of the reinforcement, the other party seemed to be able to communicate remotely and kept from consistently advancing together. The closer they were to the imperial city, their more positions seemed to converge to support each other quickly, reported the messenger. It is Yi Futian's ability. He can control demons. That was the cause of defeat during the battle for the empty realm, someone said. Unless, the man who knelt on the floor continued. Emperor Li looked at him and said, unless what? Unless His Majesty leads us to the battlefield and smashes them one by one at the fastest speed, the messenger said, his head on the ground. When two armies fought, usually, Renhuags would not participate. If Emperor Li got involved, then it was possible that Emperor Xia may get involved as well. Once a Renhuang intervened, it was possible to make the situation even more serious, until it became uncontrollable. It could even trigger a battle to extinguish an entire realm. This kind of thing was not unheard of in history. Emperor Li's eyes were sharp as he stared at the other. The man continued. However, the army of the enemy did not launch a killing spree. Perhaps they have other motivations. It was an invasion initiated by Yi Futian, presumably because of the imperial advisor, the third prince of Dali said. He had participated in the battle of the Crimson Dragon realm and understood that the imperial advisor was punished because he had let Yi Futian go. The imperial advisor's behavior had indeed been a betrayal of his position. Now, Yi Futian was eager to provoke this war. His motivation was clear. He wanted to save the imperial advisor. Is it possible for the imperial advisor? Someone started, then shut up before finishing the thought. After all, Emperor Xia's realm was using invasion as a cover, and did not say that the operation was to rescue the imperial advisor of Dali. If Dali dynasty used the life of the imperial advisor to threaten them in return, what would that look like? Emperor Li would be embarrassed. Furthermore, the other had already attacked. Would using the life of the imperial advisor even work? What would happen if it failed, and Yi Futian ordered a slaughter? At this moment someone came in running. He kneeled on one knee and said, Your Majesty, the 9 armies of the Emperor Xia's realm are advancing at full speed and heading straight towards the imperial city. Without interception, it won't be long before the imperial army of Xia arrives at the same time. The space was still silent. They were crossing the territory of the Dali dynasty and heading straight for the imperial city. Dali dynasty was immense. Out of the countless cultivators, no one was able to intercept. Although Dali was a dynasty, it couldn't mobilize all the cultivators in its kingdom to participate in the war. 9 armies plus Yi Futian and his people from the empty realm should be 10 armies in total. The sword chi permeated the air, and a strong sword will descended in the distance. Everyone turned their attention there, knowing that the cultivators of Sword Mountain had arrived. Before the swordsmen of Sword Mountain entered the hall with their swords on their backs, the clan leader of Sword Mountain was at the forefront. He bowed, saying, Your Majesty, Sword Mountain was not able to block them. I have disappointed Your Majesty. Emperor Li waved his hand. Not your fault. It was expected that it could not be stopped. The clan leader of Sword Mountain let out a sigh. Once upon a time, Sword Mountain had invited Yi Futian to cultivate there. Although the army of the enemy invaded Sword Mountain this time, it was not a slaughter. The army of Emperor Xia's realm had only injured but did not kill. Clearly, Yi Futian had deliberately ordered his men to show mercy. Strictly speaking, there were also cultivators of Sword Mountain, who were involved in the pursuit of Yi Futian while in the empty realm. It is commendable that Yi Futian could achieve such mercy. It was a pity that he was Yi Futian, not the seventh swordsman. If he was really the seventh swordsman of Dali, how perfect would it be? There was a strong breath coming from outside of the imperial palace, and the great army continued its return to the imperial city. Both King Tiandao and the Prince Regent returned and came to the hall, bowing their heads. They said, "We have failed." Not only were they unable to kill the sword master of Lihan and his companions, but were attacked by them. Their sword matrix killed many of their people. Emperor Li said nothing, as there someone came forward again. It was King Li, who arrived with cultivators from the lower world. However, King Li Wang had not even reached the Nirvana plane, and his arrival could change nothing. King Li's daughter, Li Yu, was also present, and her expression was extremely complicated. Back then, she had a good relationship with the seventh swordsman, who came from the lower world to the upper world. She knew that Yi Futian had given up on his grudge against Li Yao and had wanted to leave, but the Prince Regent pursued him relentlessly. Furthermore, the imperial advisor of Dali was later dispatched to the Crimson Dragon realm. The real mistake may have been this. Otherwise, the imperial advisor would not have gone to prison, and Dali would not be in this current situation. No one could come out and turn the tide. Dark clouds shrouded the imperial city of Li. The once prosperous Emperor Li's path seemed a little empty at the moment. The population was either converging at the palace, or left this place altogether. Everyone was talking about just one thing. The great army of Emperor Xia's realm would soon arrive at the imperial city of Li. Moreover, the person who controlled this warfare turned out to be the seventh swordsman, a disciple of the imperial advisor, whose name was known throughout Emperor Li's path. Had he come to avenge the imperial advisor? Many were thinking in just a few years, what kind of genius had Yi Futian become? What would happen at the imperial city of Li? In the imperial city, large armies from all sides continually gathered. They were the legions that guarded all corners of Dali dynasty. They had all returned now to prepare for the battle at the imperial city. But according to the information received by the people inside the imperial city, even if the entire army of the dynasty converged, they would still be suppressed in this battle. After a long while, someone rushed toward the palace. Soon, outside the imperial city, in various directions, the army of Emperor Xia's realm descended. Outside the city, people looked up at the void, their hearts trembling fiercely. Armies of saints had surrounded the city. 9 armies came one after another, appearing in different positions outside the imperial city. Their bodies levitated in the air, and they could see the adjacent army. They had arrived. The troops had come. No one would have thought that there would be a day when Dali dynasty would be pressed outside its own city wall, with no means to strike back. In the empty realm, Yi Futian had also ordered the army to gather and prepare. This time, with the troops marching to the imperial city, he did not believe that Emperor Li would not compromise and release the prisoner. Enter the city. A command was issued, and suddenly, the army outside marched straight into the imperial city in an awesome formation. All the cultivators within the city drew back with trembling hearts. Not only did the troops came to the city, but they had now marched into the city and headed toward the palace. Inside the imperial palace of Dali dynasty, Emperor Li looked up into the distance. He had sensed everything outside the city, the presence of 9 armies and a dozen nirvana existents. It was almost double their own numbers. He looked up at the sky and said, "Since you are already here, why not show yourself?" The hearts of the people inside the palace trembled, and when they saw a figure descended from the sky, it was Emperor Xia. When the army invaded the imperial city, Emperor Xia naturally had to be at the helm to control the situation. What if Emperor Li suddenly lost his composure and went crazy? But what was shocking was that beside Emperor Xia, 2 figures descended with him. One of them was an extremely beautiful woman, who stood quietly next to a man. The middle-aged man was wearing a gorgeous robe that seemed to be cast by divine feathers. His figure was long and slender, and he had strange pupils. Even in his middle age, he still possessed a handsome and extraordinary temperament. "To what do we owe the pleasure of the presence of the Peacock Emperor?" Emperor Li said, which made the hearts of many tremble. The Peacock Emperor of the Peacock Demon Realm had also come. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The Peacock Emperor stood quietly above the sky and said, "Just walking about. I heard of the dispute between Emperor Xia's realm and Emperor Li's realm, so I came to take a look." The Peacock Emperor stood quietly above the sky and said, "Just walking about. I heard of the dispute between Emperor Xia's realm and Emperor Li's realm, so I came to take a look." Emperor Li's eyes were cold. In the empty realm, the Peacock Demon Emperor's realm had joined forces with Yi Futian to fight against Dali. The appearance of the Peacock Emperor, at this moment, was naturally a cause for concern. "Your Majesty, at the time of the battle for the empty realm, Dali dynasty and the Demon Emperor's realm were allies, and were going to join forces to deal a blow to Emperor Xia's realm. However, those from Emperor Xia's realm were extremely conniving. They gained control of the cultivators of the demonic tribe and disrespected Princess Kong Xian. So now, why does Your Majesty allow the idol king to join forces with the people from Emperor Xia's realm?" Some cultivator of Chao clan said with puzzlement. It was precisely because the Peacock Demon Emperor's realm and Yi Futian joined forces that their leader had been captured. His fate was still unknown. This was also the question of many people. There was a time that Kong Xian hated Yi Futian and his cohort to the bone. Now that you mentioned the empty realm, I seem to remember, Emperor Li, that the rules of the battle for the empty realm were set by us three parties and lasted many years. Your son broke our covenant by disobeying the rules. According to the agreement, Dali will not be eligible to enter the empty realm. I am sure you understand." The Peacock Emperor did not respond to the man, but directly addressed Emperor Li. The man who spoke was pale, but Emperor Li was much calmer. The Peacock Emperor was making a point that he could not refute. When they were at the empty realm, it was indeed Li Yao who broke the rules. Well, now that the Peacock Emperor was present, was it to make Dali obey the rules? Of course, the Peacock Emperor said nothing, which only invited more speculation. But despite whatever happened in the empty realm, just the fact that the Peacock Emperor stood there was a kind of deterrence. "Emperor Li, you want to wage war to invade Emperor Xia's realm, and your elder brother, King Tiandao, does even more so and caused many provocations. Since you seem to want such an ending, then let the armies battle it out," Emperor Xia said out loud. Emperor Li was silent, like everyone else in the palace. A great battle? Their powers were in great disparity. Battling under such conditions would, no doubt, be a definite loss. At this moment, there was a strong space power blooming. The brilliance shone brightly, and the space above the palace seemed to radiate the brilliance of the great path of space. An ancient path of space appeared, and a group of figures appeared in that direction. In an instant, it attracted everyone's attention. Had the main character arrived? Everyone in Dali dynasty knew that in this war between two Renhuang realms, only Yi Futian was the one to watch. He had instigated everything. Now he came from the empty realm, through the teleportation grand matrix to descend directly in Emperor Li's city. Behind Yi Futian, there was another large army. Two Nirvana figures, Wu Yong and Lu Yu, were by his side, taking Chao Kong into custody. Chao Kong at this moment was barely breathing. He no longer resembled the awesome demon that he was known as. He had gone through some serious abuse. Yi Futian and the others would not have allowed Chao Kong to maintain any power for fighting. "Sir." The cultivators of the demonic Chao clan looked extremely worried. That was their leader, the premier demonic cultivator of the Dali dynasty. But now he was in such a miserable state. Even if he lived, how would this premier demon figure of the Dali dynasty face the world in the future? Yi Futian stepped forward toward the crowd directly across from him, and came to the front of Emperor Xia's army. Countless eyes from the Dali dynasty fell on him, and his white garments and silver hair. Whether in appearance or temperament, he was extremely outstanding. Compared to the seventh swordsman of yore, he was even more distinguished. Naturally, all of Dali knew that the silver-haired figure they saw was the genius who had infiltrated the imperial advisor's residence, the seventh swordsman. He was chased by Dali before, but now he returned with such a dominant posture. He had come leading the great army of Emperor Xia's realm. Many people in the Dali royal family knew this former seventh swordsman, had even gone to the West Mountain to hunt together. Furthermore, the aggressive seventh swordsman had executed a descendant of the Prince Regent's residence without regard for anyone. Now to behold the seventh swordsman again, the feeling was quite another. Emperor Li's eyes fell on Yi Futian. Back then, he did not even realize that the seventh swordsman was using a disguise. Once, he had wanted to grant his daughter to Yi Futian as a wife, and make him a prince consort. To kill Yi Futian at the time, Li Yao and the Prince Regent suggested that he send the imperial advisor to the Crimson Dragon realm and execute Yi Futian to neutralize this threat. And he had agreed. However, the operation failed, and the imperial advisor could not harden his heart to kill Yi Futian. Yi Futian didn't die. The imperial advisor was admonished and was imprisoned by him, and the imperial advisor's residence was history. Emperor Li, as a figure of Renhuang, did not expect that the history of the Dali dynasty would change because of a young man. Now the troops were here in the city. Yi Futian wanted to threaten him, the emperor, into compromising, to releasing the prisoner. Yi Futian greets your majesty, Emperor Li. Looking at Emperor Li, Yi Futian said in a clear voice, but he did not bow in respect, and there was not much respect in his tone. One could even say that his tone had a touch of indifference. In the battle at Crimson Dragon Realm, it was impossible without the explicit consent of the emperor. Who could order the imperial advisor if not the emperor? Obviously, Emperor Li had the intention to coerce the imperial advisor. Although he valued the imperial advisor, his heart was closer to King Tiandao and the Prince Regent. After all, the same blood flowed within them. No matter how much the imperial advisor of Dali achieved, no matter how extraordinary he was always an outsider who could be used and even given enough respect. But when push came to shove, it was always blood that could be trusted more. If the imperial advisor was a relative of the emperor, perhaps the emperor would not have sent him to the Crimson Dragon realm. Emperor Li should have known how difficult it was for the imperial advisor. But Emperor Li had hoped the imperial advisor would make a choice. You have brought your men here, so don't bother with pretense. Emperor Li looked at Yi Futian coldly and said, Yi Futian, what do you want? When I cultivated in the 9 states, the lower world of Emperor Xia's realm, Li Yao crossed the Renhuang realm, leading people to lay siege on the clan I was with. This caused heavy casualties to my clan, including my wife. Yi Futian looked at Emperor Li and continued. In the Battle of the Empty Realm, it was another slaughter with total disregard of the rules. And in the Crimson Dragon realm, Dali dynasty sent out 4 nirvanas to attempt to kill me. It's not about what I want, but rather, your majesty, what do you want? Emperor Li stared at Yi Futian. If Emperor Li desires so much for me to be dead, well, here I am. Emperor Li could order them to do it. Yi Futian pointed to the people of the Dali dynasty. No one made a move. On the side of the Dali dynasty, there was dead silence. If the armies collided, they would suffer great defeat. There was no doubt about that. Once, Dali dynasty had attempted to kill Yi Futian many times, but now there was no way that they could. When Emperor Xia saw Emperor Li's silence, he said, Emperor Li, you are, after all, an existence of Renhuang. If you hesitate without a decision, our fighting will be at a stalemate. Why not play a round of chess? Chess. At this moment, Emperor Li did not have the interest to play chess. He and Emperor Xia were equal in strength. One could not beat the other. If there had been a clear gap, there would never have been border wars. The hardest fist was not bound by rules. It was only when 2 sides were equal was there the need for rules. Your Majesty, decide, Yi Futian said. Along the way, he didn't allow mindless slaughtering. It was obvious that he did not view this invasion as a true border battle. Otherwise, it would not have been so peaceful. Countless people of Dali would have fallen along the way. They had only killed those who fought against them, because it was kill or be killed by the other. Emperor Li, of course, knew what he wanted. 10 armies descended today. With soldiers now in the city, all these thousands of men came for only one person. The majestic imperial palace, with its towering hall, stood there in extreme solemnity. Today, for the first time, someone dared to threaten the lord of the Dali dynasty, Emperor Li, to make a decision in this majestic palace. Countless eyes fell on Emperor Li and Yi Futian opposite him. The army encircled the palace, and dark clouds loomed over the city, threatening Emperor Li. Although the reference to a decision was not stated, everyone knew very well what he meant. He wanted the emperor to let the prisoner go. The entire hall inside the palace was filled with pressure. Inside the imperial palace, in the jail cell suppressed by the ritual implement, the imperial advisor of Dali sat there with weak breath, guarded by cultivators next to him. And now, the two who were guarding him were actually on the unblemished saint plane. The two unblemished saints looked into the distance and knew what was happening. They felt pity in their hearts and looked at the imperial advisor of Dali. Once, he was the first person of Dali dynasty under the emperor. Once he ruled the realm. All had respected him. Even now, though he was imprisoned, a bloody storm of a war started because of him. Emperor Xia's realm had sent its soldiers to the imperial palace. A fierce battle would be launched if Emperor Li did not comply. Imperial advisor still has power. Even in prison, there are still those who will shed blood on account of the imperial advisor, an unblemished saint remarked. The imperial advisor of Dali raised his head and looked into the distance with a faded gaze. Although his cultivation was obliterated, he could still feel the horrible atmosphere of the entire palace. The entire palace of Dali was facing a great enemy. He knew Yi Futian had come. He valued Yi Futian's talent, and his ideal of boundless great path. Of course, he was reluctant to kill such a character. So, he released Yi Futian in the Crimson Dragon realm. He knew what it meant to release Yi Futian when he had personally witnessed the death of Liao. It meant that he had burned all the bridges, but still he did it. Someone like Yi Futian should not die, let alone by his hands. He knew that Yi Futian would inevitably create into a realm far beyond his own, but he did not expect that Yi Futian would come so soon with his troops. Why bother? Muttered the imperial advisor. It was true that he did betray his position and betrayed Dali. Thus, his cultivation was obliterated. But he did not blame anyone. This was his own choice, and the ending that he deserved. But thinking of Yi Futian's arrival, he smiled again. Perhaps he was happy, because he had such a disciple. He had thought that his life would end in a whimper, and he would be content for Feishue to live a little longer. But Yi Futian had cured Feishue, and Yin Yuan, and the others had also escaped this place, flying free like birds. Now, there was a disciple of his who may leave a mark in the history of the 3,000 realms. What dissatisfaction could there be in such a life? Even if he were to die now, there would be no regrets. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. At the imperial palace of Dali, the mighty armies were facing each other. At the imperial palace of Dali, the mighty armies were facing each other. 3 major Renhuang figures appeared here. Although the palace was very peaceful at the moment, everyone knew that once it exploded, it would be earth-shattering. The whole point now hinged on whether or not the two sides could reach an agreement. Yi Futian launched the war this time, and led an army to invade the imperial palace of Dali. His purpose was not to slaughter. Otherwise, the way over would not have been so quiet, and countless cultivators would have perished. He came for the imperial advisor of Dali, and wanted to force Emperor Li of the Dali dynasty to decide to release the imperial advisor. But could he persuade the emperor? At this moment, Emperor Li looked toward Yi Futian. In his cultivation until now, in the Renhuang plain, he had ruled a realm respected by all in Dali dynasty. He wanted to strengthen the Dali dynasty, so that even in times of trouble, they could conquer or defend. He wanted to glorify the name of the royal family of Dali, so that it would be known more than just in the one realm. The imperial advisor was competent and was valued. In his view, the imperial advisor would be the main force in his plan to strengthen Dali dynasty. He had even vacated the power of the prince regent and gave all the power to the imperial advisor. However, the imperial advisor had disappointed him. After all, the imperial advisor was not part of the Li clan, and there was no blood of the royal family flowing inside of him. Therefore, he did not share the same position as him. When he encountered Yi Futian, he had committed treason because of his affinity toward his disciple. He had said once that he could allow the imperial advisor to make any mistakes, except treason. He was also willing to give the imperial advisor a chance, but he had declined. Therefore, he asked the imperial advisor to obliterate his cultivation and be imprisoned. Now Yi Futian, the genius character who had caused the betrayal of the imperial advisor, had come here and surrounded the palace with his great armies, threatening him to release the imperial advisor. To release him or not, Yi Futian asked him to make a decision. But how? Yi Futian, in the world of cultivation, discussion of past rights and wrongs are meaningless. Li Yao killed your wife and those in your clan, but you also killed him. You want to rescue the imperial advisor, but the predicament the imperial advisor is in today is all because of you. If it was not for you having been the imperial advisor's disciple as the seventh swordsman, the imperial advisor would still maintain his honorable position in our Dali dynasty, and the imperial advisor's residence would still be respected by those in Dali. All of this was because of your plan for revenge. Emperor Li looked at Yi Futian and said, "Since you want me to make a decision, it will all end today. Everything started with you, and it shall end with you. Yi Futian, if you die, then the imperial advisor will still be the imperial advisor of Dali. I will forgive all the charges against the imperial advisor and his residents. And if they are willing, they can still be in positions of power in Dali dynasty. Of course, he can also choose to leave, and I shall send him off in a manner befitting his position as the imperial advisor." Those who were around were trembling inside, and countless eyes fell on Yi Futian. Emperor Li's decision was that for Yi Futian to die, and the imperial advisor would be released, and all transgressions would be pardoned. Now, the people of the Dali dynasty could naturally see that Yi Futian's progress posed a great threat to Dali. If he died, there would not be a Runhuang figure who might obstruct Dali dynasty. If he died, the great army would also fall apart. The Peacock Emperor and Kong Xian were most likely here because of him. And those figures of Nirvana Plain from the Crimson Dragon realm were also fighting for him. As long as Yi Futian was dead, everything would end. Yi Futian stared at Emperor Li. So he asked him to die in exchange for the imperial advisor of Dali? The people of Emperor Xia's realm were angry in their countenance, and Emperor Xia also frowned. The imperial advisor is in this predicament today because of you, and he was willing to die for you, Yi Futian. What the imperial advisor could do you cannot. Emperor Li continued, such a disciple is dishonorable. Emperor Li's voice emitted a strange authority. It penetrated Yi Futian's eardrums and directly affected his will. In addition to the words themselves, his voice also directly affected Yi Futian's emotions. It was as if his words were the truth. He wanted Yi Futian to exchange his life for the imperial advisors. Yi Futian's heart was shaking, and his mind was affected. He frowned a little, seeming to have felt the influence of Emperor Li's voice. However, he soon returned to a peaceful state of mind, firmed up his will, and he cast an indifferent look toward Emperor Li. My master exchanged his life for mine because he was unwilling to slay me. But you wanted me dead, so what my master did was in vain. Yi Futian said coldly. In addition, there are many elders of Emperor Xia's realm, as well as elders from Crimson Dragon realm, and the mighty army that joined in this battle because of me. What would become of their deed if I died? Furthermore, your majesty, you don't seem to understand the situation today. I am giving your majesty a chance to decide, not a chance to renegotiate the conditions of the exchange. Yi Futian's voice grew colder and colder. He stretched out his hand, and suddenly, the breath of many nirvana figures bloomed, sweeping through the space and overwhelming the palace, shrouding the imperial palace in an atmosphere of terror. Many large armies marched forward, oppressing with an even stronger might of authority. If there was one misdirected word, there would be a bloodbath. And in the imperial palace of Dali dynasty, a great battle would erupt. Behind Yi Futian, the swordmaster of Lihan, and the others reveal a look of relief. Had Yi Futian been influenced by the words of Emperor Li and agreed to such a ridiculous request, then they probably would have been disappointed. Otherwise, why did they fight? Because of Yi Futian's talent, because of his brilliant future. It was possible that he would be a figure who could influence the realms. If it was so easy to lose life over this, then what was the meaning of everything they had done? It was exactly as he said. What was the reason for the imperial advisor of Dali sparing his life? Now would he be seeking his own death? The hopes of many were pinned on his life. Is it? Emperor Li looked at Yi Futian with sharp eyes and said, "If so, you can order them to give it a try." He was still standing proudly when he spoke. The authority of Ren Huang was released to its fullest and shrouded the heavens. His eyes were so deep and unfathomable that it was hard to see what his thoughts were. He wanted to see if Yi Futian dared to issue an order to kill. For many things, there was a difference between 0 and infinity. Once there was a first time, then there naturally would be a second time. Today, Yi Futian led an army to press them, and Dali dynasty had no power to resist. The attack came straight inside the palace, and undoubtedly it was a shameful business to Emperor Li. However, today he was threatened by Yi Futian to compromise. After that, would the people of Emperor Xia's realm no longer attack? If not, then what was the point to compromise? What he wanted now was for Yi Futian to die. If Yi Futian didn't die, the situation would not change. And for Dali dynasty, it could only get worse. Because Yi Futian would only become stronger and stronger, and the outside forces could become even greater. Currently, he was only saint of true self. What if he became unblemished or entered the nirvana plane? Once he entered the nirvana plane, the combat power of him alone would be no less than the imperial advisors. And perhaps, there would only be more people who would follow him. Now it was a game between the two. Yi Futian wanted to force him to release the imperial advisor. He wanted to see if Yi Futian dared to make a move. Yi Futian was silent. Looking at Emperor Li's eyes, he knew that he had underestimated the power of Ren Huang. Emperor Li would not move first, but he was also betting that Yi Futian dared not to strike first. If it were rushed, then everyone would perish together. Rules were rules, and rules were meant to be broken, not last forever. Unless there were stronger forces regulating the rules. If the moment of life and death for Dali arrived, would Emperor Li still abide by the rules? Release the imperial advisor and return his freedom, so that he is no longer bound by Dali. From then on, I, Yi Futian, will never step inside Emperor Li's realm, Yi Futian said. Knowing full well the concerns of Emperor Li, he felt that Yi Futian was too great of a threat, and even if he promised to release the imperial advisor, it would not change the situation in the future. Therefore, he wanted Yi Futian to die. It's not enough, Emperor Li said lightly. I can release the imperial advisor, but he still belongs to Dali, and cannot leave the imperial city of Dali. Even if Yi Futian never entered the Dali dynasty, others still could. What's more, just how credible were Yi Futian's words? The threat to Dali dynasty remained. Either Yi Futian was dead, or the imperial advisor would continue to be controlled by Emperor Li. Emperor Li, this is hardly the kind of character befitting Ren Huang, Emperor Xia said casually. Wait until Emperor Xia's realm faces a moment like this. Then ask yourself if you have the right to utter this sentence or not. Emperor Li responded indifferently. He was the emperor of the Dali dynasty. All of Dali dynasty was under his guardianship. He would never allow it to be threatened. Yi Futian looked at the figure standing proudly on the top of the stairs, his fists clenched. He was struggling inside. Emperor Li's thinking was spot on. Even if he never entered Dali again, he still had ways to deal with it. Emperor Li had hardened his heart now. He was unwilling to compromise and refused to let the imperial advisor go. Emperor Li, Li Yao and all who had grievances with me have died, and the imperial advisor lost his cultivation. All this was counted as even between us, and will stop right here. The loss suffered by Emperor Xia's realm was repaid with the empty realm, so from now on, Dali dynasty will never be allowed to enter the empty realm. Yi Futian continued. Going forward, I will no longer pursue any of these grudges. Many people looked toward Yi Futian. In fact, other than Chao Kong, others still had grudges with Yi Futian. Many cultivators, including the Prince Regent, had gone to the Crimson Dragon realm to kill him, leading to the situation with the Imperial Advisor. But for the freedom of the Imperial Advisor, Yi Futian was willing to make concessions and compromise. In this battle, the army of Emperor Xia's realm participated, but he knew very well that it was not only because of him, but also Emperor Xia. He couldn't gamble everyone's life because of his own grudges. At this moment, he has only one goal, and that was to take the Imperial Advisor away from Dali dynasty, so that he could reunite with Yin Yuan and Fei Xue, no longer being oppressed by Dali, and getting to choose as he wished. Concessions such as this should be acceptable to Emperor Li? After all, Emperor Xia's realm came to attack, and had breached the palace. Along the way, many important strategic locations of Dali dynasty were taken by them, including the Medicine City and other important ruins. It could be said that Yi Futian had the absolute advantage, but now, Yi Futian had only one condition, and that was the freedom of the Imperial Advisor, and for that, he could let go of everything that had been taken. Next to him, Emperor Xia said nothing. This battle was for Yi Futian, and he should make all the decisions. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. That's not enough. That's not enough. A cold voice responded to Yi Futian. Emperor Li looked at him and spat out these words. Not enough. Even if Yi Futian decided to give up the pursuance of this grudge, and his only wish now was to leave with the Imperial Advisor safely, and he would no longer pursue things of the past. That was all he wanted now. As long as Emperor Li would agree, he would evacuate from Dali. However, Emperor Li had refused decisively. When Yi Futian heard the response from Emperor Li, his face became extremely cold, and a chill was released from his body. His fists were tightly clenched. Today's situation, having surrounded the imperial palace of Dali, was an absolute advantage for them. It should be them who dictated the conditions to force Emperor Li to comply. However, the fact was that he stepped back and conceded, while Emperor Li still felt that it was not enough and refused to make any concessions, and released the Imperial Advisor. The Peacock Emperor watched all this quietly in the void. He secretly transmitted to Kong Xian saying, when both parties are in negotiation, whoever cares the most is destined to lose. Emperor Li is Ren Huang, after all, and dares to gamble everything and let go. But Yi Futian he can't give up. He came for the Imperial Advisor, and his purpose is clear. He cares more than Emperor Li, so in this exchange he is destined to lose. Kong Xian appeared to be deep in thought. Her father transmitted a secret message to her, was perhaps reminding her of something. In the future, she may also have the experience of an exchange such as this. Even those from Dali dynasty thought that the emperor might agree to Yi Futian's request, and let the Imperial Advisor go, and Yi Futian would retreat. But they did not expect that Emperor Li still did not agree. The advantage that Emperor Li had, compared to that of Yi Futian, was that Yi Futian dared not gamble the lives of everyone, unlike Emperor Li. He was the lord of the Dali dynasty. He could make any decision, and no one could disagree with him. He did not need to consider anything else. He only needed to consider himself. It was deathly still. Even though Yi Futian was angry, he was also helpless. He wanted to have a great fight, and let the army sweep over the entire Dali dynasty. But just as everyone thought, he had more concerns, and he cared more. Your Majesty then means to make war? Yi Futian stared at Emperor Li and said, you came from Emperor Xia's realm, and attacked until you came in front of me. Now you ask me if I chose to go to war? Emperor Li smiled sarcastically, saying, Yi Futian, I will give you two options. Withdraw, and I release the Imperial Advisor, but he is still not allowed to leave the Imperial City. The second choice is this. Now that the Imperial Advisor is suppressed under a pagoda, if you are willing to try to survive the 3 levels of suppressions of the pagoda, in the stead of the imperial advisor, and you are willing to withdraw your army, you may leave with the imperial advisor if you live. Nirvana-level implements are not to be trifled with, Emperor Xia said, looking towards Emperor Li. The imperial advisor once served the Dali dynasty, but now you threaten us with his life. Emperor Li, don't you think this is unbefitting to your honor as Ren Huang? The imperial advisor of Dali betrayed us because of him, yet he refuses to die for the imperial advisor. Now, I only ask him to bear the suffering of the imperial advisor. Emperor Li responded coldly. The imperial advisor suffered such pain for you daily, Yi Futian. What about you? His voice was the same as before. It was as if contained certain magic, affecting Yi Futian's will. Many understood. Before, Emperor Li had already revealed his desire for Yi Futian to die. Now he did not directly ask Yi Futian to die for the imperial advisor, but this request was not far off. He wanted to use this to kill Yi Futian, so as not to worry later. Otherwise, even if Yi Futian promised to let go of the grudge, Emperor Li would probably still be worried. Only a dead man would require no more guarding. What is the difference between this and asking me to die if Emperor Li takes control of the implement? Yi Futian said. Others will control it, Emperor Li said. Yi Futian seemed a little moved. No matter what means I use? Yi Futian said. Yes, Emperor Li answered. Means? Even if Yi Futian had incredible means as saint of true self, if he dared to agree to it, there would only be one conclusion, and that was death. Even if he could use the external force to exert strength far beyond the realm, the result would be the same. Yi Futian, Emperor Xia called out and looked toward Yi Futian. Yi Futian turned to look back at Emperor Xia, who said, You don't need to promise him anything. Obviously, he also did not want Yi Futian to save the imperial advisor in this manner. Since Emperor Li had proposed it, it meant that he had absolute certainty of taking Yi Futian's life. As soon as Yi Futian agreed, what awaited him could very well be death. What if your majesty breaks your promise? Yi Futian asked again. The Peacock Emperor is here. He can be a witness, Emperor Li said, looking up at the Peacock Emperor. Gladly, the Peacock Emperor in the void nodded in agreement. Father, Kong Xian looked at him. The Peacock Emperor had agreed so decisively, but for Yi Futian, the result could be fatal. However, the Peacock Emperor seemed extremely peaceful. Yi Futian had chosen this path himself. He caused this war, and everything was his doing. The final decision, ultimately, was in Yi Futian's hands. Very well. Yi Futian spat these words, which made the hearts of many tremble. Xia Qingyuan stared at him. Had he agreed to such poor conditions? Yi Futian. Emperor Xia transmitted his voice to Yi Futian. Since Emperor Li threatens me with the life of my master, this is the only way. If I can't bear it, your majesty can interfere then by force. Yi Futian secretly transmitted his voice to Emperor Xia. Since Emperor Li was eager for him to die, he would play ball with Emperor Li. Of course, he wouldn't want to die and trade his own life, so he reminded Emperor Xia. He nodded and agreed, but Emperor Xia did not. Since Emperor Li could intervene by force, so could Emperor Xia. Both King Tiandao and the Prince Regent flashed cold murderous intent in their eyes. They would dare to agree? If so, then the only thing left to do was to kill. They wanted to see how Yi Futian would manage to resist the slaughter of the pagoda. Since that's the case, let's go and check on the imperial advisor. Emperor Li now seemed rather calm, and did not show any emotions. He turned around, and walked toward the center of the imperial palace. All the cultivators of Dali were following him. Emperor Xia waved his hand, and the mighty army suddenly moved forward together, heading in one direction. After a short while, they came to a prison, and saw the figure of the imperial advisor of Dali. This prison was not an ordinary prison, but was in a separate independent space. In the sky above the imperial advisor of Dali, there was a giant pagoda, brilliant sprinkling lights that turned into an independent prison. The body of the imperial advisor was enclosed within, like a prison in space. Traces of horrible will of the great path permeated from it, and there seemed to be an enchantment surrounding the imperial advisor. At that moment he was sitting on the ground. His hair was a mess, his eyes were cloudy, and his hair had grayed much. He resembled the hero of yore, no longer possessing the brave spirit of his former self. Seeing the appearance of the imperial advisor, Yi Futian felt a little sad inside. How could this be the first person under the throne of Dali dynasty? Master. Yi Futian felt saddened, seeing what was before him. He still remembered that when he first came to the Dali dynasty, he had come from the lower realm and entered the palace. He met the disciple of the imperial advisor, Lu Chuan. Even though Lu Chuan was only the youngest disciple of the imperial advisor, he was still in a superior position, treated as a guest of honor by King Li, who ruled the lower realm as one of the four kings. After entered into the upper realm of Dali, he felt even more clearly how respected the imperial advisor of Dali was in Dali dynasty. He has been someone who stood at the peak top of all of Dali, but because he didn't want to kill him, he ended up like this. One could only imagine how Yi Futian felt at this moment in his heart. Leave. The imperial advisor looked at Yi Futian with murky eyes. His voice seemed weak and lacked energy. Leave. Seeing his master like this, how could Yi Futian leave? He walked forward. Behind him, Emperor Xia shrouded the entire palace with his might. If someone in Dali dared to make a move on Yi Futian, he would intervene directly. Master, I will leave with you, Yi Futian said. The imperial advisor had no more cultivation left. How could he leave his master here in this state? Seeing the master today, his breath of life was drying up. He was left on his own. He could really die. For cultivators, the loss of cultivation was the greatest nightmare. People of Emperor Xia's realm seemed to understand why Yi Futian wanted to save the imperial advisor of Dali at all costs. The former imperial advisor of Dali had ended up like this. Even those top characters of Emperor Xia's realm, who had seen him in Crimson Dragon realm, still felt saddened in their hearts. How great was the imperial advisor back then? Even the great shaman was unable to resist him, and was suppressed firmly by him. Just himself alone, he could battle several Nirvana characters at the same time. And now, he was on the verge of death. Futian, it's not worth it. The imperial advisor looked at him and said. It was not worth it for Yi Futian to save him. You were high above in Dali dynasty, but ended up like this because of me. Was it worth it? Yi Futian whispered, feeling pain in his heart. He went forward, step by step, and horrific breath was released from him. The flames now burned into the sky. Above the firmament, wind and clouds were changing. Suddenly, Yi Futian's body seemed to be devoured by the flames, but his eyes were still on the imperial advisor. He continued forward toward the area that was suppressed by the pagoda. Boom! A horrible illusion of the flaming god of war was condensed into existence. An elusive face seemed to appear in the flames above the sky. It was as if Emperor Kwa was summoned here and had descended. The sound of a roar came out. Yi Futian's body became immense, and the Zhonglo battle form was cast. It grew larger and larger, exuding radiance light of the sun. It was irresistible. The people of the Dali dynasty looked at this scene with shock. Could he exert such tremendous power? At this point, Yi Futian's breath was already that of the Nirvana plane. The strength of that flame was so strong that it might really slay the existence of Nirvana plane. Boom! With one step, Yi Futian entered under the pagoda. Suddenly, the lights of the pagodas fell down, and the violent force streamed down along his body, as if to shatter his body. Do it! Yi Futian looked up and looked in the direction of Emperor Li. Emperor Li looked indifferent toward King Tiandao. The chance was best with King Tiandao controlling the implement to kill Yi Futian. Even though Yi Futian's power was comparable to Nirvana at this moment, he still would not escape the fate of death. Today he would die. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. King Tiandao went up to the pagoda. His willpower entered into it, causing it to rotate. Golden light fell upon it like bolts of lightning. King Tiandao went up to the pagoda. His willpower entered into it, causing it to rotate. Golden light fell upon it like bolts of lightning. Outside the pagoda, the divine golden dragon was circling it, slowly materializing into what looked like a real dragon. Images of more pagodas fell continuously onto Yi Futian's massive figure. All was dead silent throughout the vastness of the sky. Everyone was watching the scene unfolding before them. This was the bet between Emperor Li and Yi Futian. It would probably determine the imperial advisor's fate. The imperial advisor of Dali dynasty looked at the figure in front of him. The once handsome youth had become incredibly large and tall. It seemed that he was trying to protect the old man. A hurricane swept over towards them, making his white hair fly in the wind. However, he had not yet used even the slightest bit of his power. His powers had been permanently damaged, and so there was nothing he could do other than watch everything unfold. The light of the pagoda was extremely bright in that suffocating space. After what seemed like a long time, King Tiandao was finally able to control the pagoda completely. He stepped forward with a cold look on his face. He looked down at Yi Futian. He knew why Emperor Li was doing this. The true killing power of the pagoda did not lie in what it displayed on the outside. As long as Yi Futian nodded, he would be killed beyond all shadow of a doubt. Even if it had been him who had to bear the 3 attacks that would happen when he activated the pagoda, he would still be in danger. So how much more so would be Yi Futian, who was merely a saint of true self. When Yi Futian died, the others from the Crimson Dragon realm would flee as well. The others did not know the imperial advisor, or even Emperor Xia. They were not Emperor Xia's subordinates, so they would not necessarily give their lives for him. Moreover, Emperor Xia himself would not dare to gamble the lives of all his people here to save the imperial advisor. Die, said King Tiandao in a low voice. He finally made his move. There was a loud noise as shining divine beings were released from the pagoda. Boom! A shocking noise rang out as Yi Futian's massive body was smashed by a colossal pagoda that covered him completely. Endless destructive lightning ravaged his flesh, and he was crushed by a terrible pressure. The dragon roared as Yi Futian raised his head. He seemed to have appeared in the space in the middle of the pagoda. The divine golden dragon rushed down with a roar and entered directly into his mind, smashing into his spiritual willpower. The dragon's roar sought to shake his very soul. Crack, crack, crack. Inch by inch, cracks were appearing in Yi Futian's massive form. His mind shook, and he felt half dead from fright as his flesh was destroyed. He was too strong. This power would not only destroy his body, it would also destroy his spiritual willpower. So this was a weapon of mass destruction. Yi Futian's massive form could not even withstand a single attack. Everyone's hearts trembled as they watched. Emperor Xia's eyes were cold as he watched. It seemed like he was ready to get involved at any moment. If Yi Futian could not hold out, then he would get involved, even if it started a war. He could not watch Yi Futian die. Yi Futian had made a bet, but he did not want him to give up his life. Continue, said Emperor Li. His voice was calm. He did not ask for King Tiandao to stop. If he wanted to kill him, he would have to do it all with one sustained effort, and not give Yi Futian a chance to breathe. You would have to crush him. You would have to destroy his body and cut out his soul. No matter how outstandingly talented Yi Futian was today, he would be left behind forever. Very well, answered King Tiandao. He launched another attack that split the earth and cracked the sky. The endless divine light of the great path gathered together and fell upon the pagodas. The pagodas seemed to grow taller and rotated above Yi Futian's head. All of the attacks were falling upon Yi Futian. They were extremely accurate, and not a bit of power was wasted. The several unblemished saints by Emperor Li were protecting the imperial advisor with their will. Even though the attacks were incredibly accurate and would not hit him by accident, the imperial advisor was so weak that he could not bear even the slightest disturbance. Before Emperor Li made his decision, they could not let him die here. The endless divine light transformed into another pagoda that wrapped around Yi Futian. The storm of golden pagodas spun, flattening everything, continuously shattering his Chonglu battle form. The terrible destructive storm seemed to be at the nirvana level. Its fury was continuously renewed. The Chonglu battle form seemed about to collapse, and his legs seemed unable to support him as he was cut down by the terrible force. It appeared that he would fall. Endless arms of flames of the way stretched out, pressing against the ground to hold him up, but the terrible destructive light destroyed them. Boom! Yi Futian could only feel a divine pagoda crushing down on him. Magma seemed to be condensing from his flames of the way, turning into an indestructible solid. But cracks still appeared in it. What was worse was that his body was relatively unharmed, compared to what he was suffering in his mind. With pagodas and firelight dancing before his eyes, the imperial advisor of Dali's robes fluttered in the wind. He looked over at the battle form that was being crushed in front of him. Suddenly, he found himself thinking of a previous destructive battle. At that time, he had been in Emperor Li's good graces. Thus, when he had entered the Dali dynasty, he had been named imperial advisor. He had been devoted to the dynasty and trained many cultivators. Today, many of the amazing cultivators of the Dali dynasty had once been under his guidance. He did not want to see the future Dali dynasty suffer the kind of destruction he had once faced. At the same time, as the Dali dynasty was rising, he had taught disciples and found a place for Futian. He had thought that life would always be like that. If he could protect the dynasty as it prospered and spend more time with Futian, he would have been satisfied. Because Futian spent so much time sleeping, the two of them spent more time separated than together. The days had passed like this for many years. But since Futian was always in the realm of sleep, and had been so young, he had had to move forward alone in order to protect Futian. Futian's appearance had changed everything. Everything in the world has a destiny. In the end, it had been impossible for things to continue as he had wished. But no matter what, everything that had happened before had been destined to happen, and so he could accept them with a clear conscience. Even if he died, he would have no regrets. But those disciples who had studied under him for a time were not willing to let him die. The destructive storm was tearing through Futian's battle form. It seemed like he was about to fall. A stronger force was brewing, and could fall at any time. Emperor Xia's aura was growing stronger. It seemed like he was preparing to attack. But just at that moment, an even stronger aura burst out from Emperor Li. He did not look at Futian, but at Emperor Xia. Emperor Xia, he said, the winner and loser of the previous battle have already been decided. Let's have another one, shall we? On saying this, he stepped forward and suddenly descended right in front of Emperor Xia. He had obviously guessed what Emperor Xia was thinking. He would not let Emperor Xia interrupt King Tiandao while he was killing Futian. Emperor Li was so strong once he decided to act. In a flash, the entire palace was filled with his power. Emperor Xia raised his hand to attack, forcing his opponent's energy to disperse. The great army of Emperor Xia's realm was behind him. The two of them shot up into the clouds. There was a loud noise, and destructive light boomed. If the two of them had not gone up into the sky, countless people would have been killed by their attacks. Emperor Li was gambling with the lives of everyone in his palace. He was betting that Emperor Xia would not put up a fight. His beloved daughter Xia Qingyuan was there as well. Boom! At that moment, King Tiandao launched his third attack. Everyone's hearts were beating wildly as they stared at Futian. His battle form was cracking inch by inch as it continuously collapsed. A lightning bolt shot into him, piercing through his body. The pressure was crushing him down. He turned his huge eyes towards the imperial advisor. Why are you doing this? The imperial advisor's long hair flew in the wind as he stared at Futian. This was not the outcome he had wished for. He did not want to see Futian gamble his own life for his. However, he saw that Futian was smiling. Blood was flowing from his mouth. As the heavens' movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. These words echoed throughout Emperor Li's mind. These were the words that he had said to Futian. Now Futian was giving them back to him. When cultivating the great path, a gentleman should be continually improving himself. Why should he seek death? That was nirvana. Looking into those smiling eyes, the imperial advisor smiled as well. But even as he smiled, his eyes grew wet. He slowly stood up. Even though the years weighed down on him, he still stood straight. He had the backbone of a gentleman. As heaven's movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. The imperial advisor looked up into the sky. A terrible storm was whipping across the land, and a brilliant light was flashing. His body was still extremely fragile, and it seemed as if a gust of wind could knock him over. But within that weak body lay an unyielding heart. Boom! Boom! Boom. Destructive attacks were still shattering Yi Futian's battle form, and even smashing into his body. His spiritual will was also under devastating attack. But his eyes were still bright. You're still not dead. King Tiandao's face darkened. You have had your 3 attacks. Release the Imperial Advisor, came a voice from up in the sky. But as for the army that Yi Futian is leading, destroy them. The words destroy them fell from the sky like a bolt of lightning, entering directly into everyone's minds. It seemed that Emperor Li still wanted to do this. He had only promised to let the Imperial Advisor go. He had not promised that after 3 attacks, he would stop fighting altogether. King Tiandao could take this chance to kill Yi Futian. Yi Futian had no chance to escape. As long as he abided by Emperor Li's conditions, he would die for sure. Yes, Your Highness, said King Tiandao clearly. He had a fierce desire to kill Yi Futian. The unblemished saint's power disappeared from the Imperial Advisor's body. And at the same time, they tried to undo his bindings. Don't trouble yourselves, whispered the Imperial Advisor. As he said this, the bindings on him shattered into pieces. The destructive hurricane swept out, sending the unblemished saints around him flying. Brilliant light shot up from his body into the sky. Just as King Tiandao launched another attack, he raised his fist. Dong! With a loud noise, an incomparably huge pagoda fell. But it was blocked by a huge palm print that covered the sky. It was big enough to block the entire sky in one direction. Countless beams of divine light fell upon the Imperial Advisor. His white hair gradually disappeared, and his wrinkles faded. His cloudy eyes became dazzlingly bright again. His calm voice rang out through the palace. From now on, I will no longer obey Emperor Li. I am no longer the Imperial Advisor of the Dali dynasty. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Everyone's hearts were beating fiercely as they watched. Everyone's hearts were beating fiercely as they watched. They saw the Imperial Advisor standing there in his worn-out robes. Although he had been rejuvenated, his body still looked frail. But even so, a brilliant divine light shone around him, and a formation flashed into existence. The ancient characters strong, flowing, leave, and threshold circled around him, making the storm of the great path grow stronger and stronger. He looked up into the sky, and began to rise into the air. Everyone's hearts were pounding. The Imperial Advisor of the Dali dynasty had destroyed his powers. So what was happening now? He raised his hand, covering the sky and blocking the divine pagoda that was crushing down. Yi Futian looked up a little bit. When he saw what was happening, a bright smile appeared on his face. As the heavens' movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. This was the Imperial Advisor. He had permanently destroyed his powers, because he had not wanted to leave for the sake of Yin Yuan and the others. However, he had reached nirvana. When one reached the nirvana level, dying was not that easy. He may have destroyed his powers, but the nirvana within him could be born again. The Imperial Advisor had done this. This was true nirvana, even stronger than it had been in the past. King Tiandao looked shocked. He could faintly feel a transcendent power. It was frightening. The Imperial Advisor of the Dali dynasty had gone beyond the peak in a single step. His body may have been weak and frail, but he could shake the earth with his very thoughts. Boom! He activated the pagoda, and divine light shone, splitting the very air as it tried to flatten down everything below it. It was trying to kill the Imperial Advisor before he had been wholly revived. The image of a huge divine pagoda appeared, crushing downwards. It seemed strong enough to break someone's very soul. The Imperial Advisor looked up. Brilliant divine light was falling onto him from the sky. His aura was still quite weak, but when he stretched out his hand, a mighty figure appeared, moving in tandem with him. He raised his hand and pointed at the pagoda. At that moment, countless beams of light fell upon the pagoda at the same time. A loud dong rang out through the sky. In the next instant, countless cracks appeared in the divine pagoda, as everyone watched with trembling eyes. The cracks spread and widened. Bang! The pagoda shattered as the divine light swept over it. A nirvana-level ritual implement had been shattered. What level of power could do this? Renhuang level? No. They could all naturally feel that the imperial advisor had not become a Renhuang yet. A Renhuang would be even more terrible than this. Moreover, to break through to the Renhuang level was not that easy. Even if your state of mind changed, it did not mean that you would necessarily be able to break through. But even though he had not become a Renhuang, he was still close to that level. The imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty was at the peak of the nirvana level. He was subordinate only to Emperor Li. His current breakthrough only proved that he had already touched the path of Renhuang. Yi Futian knew that he had already reached the level of ninth servant. Maybe he was even higher. But ninth servant looked down on all the nirvana level cultivators. They had relied on forming the sword matrix of the void to hurt ninth servant. But even so, he had crushed Li Kai, and they were unable to block him. From this, the ninth servant's power and confidence were evident. And right now, the imperial advisor was giving Yi Futian a similar feeling of invincibility. He had destroyed a nirvana-level ritual implement by pointing at it. A look of shock came over King Tiandao's face. He shot up into the sky, trying to escape. The imperial advisor was too frightening then. He was making him afraid. King Tiandao, said the imperial advisor. He clenched his fist, and suddenly the sky-covering palm print shot downward. King Tiandao felt a suffocating pressure covering him and slowing his movements. The palm print grabbed King Tiandao. His aura surged with power, but he was unable to escape. The imperial advisor was still floating up. He kept going until he was level with King Tiandao. Imperial advisor, are you going to betray the Dali dynasty completely? Roared King Tiandao. I have already died once. I have no more association with the Dali dynasty. You wanted to kill me, and even destroy my residence, causing a war between realms. So, I will give you a glorious death, said the imperial advisor. No. When King Tiandao felt the imperial advisor's murderous intent, a look of panic came over his face. He was King Tiandao of the Dali dynasty, the brother of Emperor Li. He had once almost taken the throne from the emperor. Bang! The imperial advisor did not give him a chance. He squeezed his fist, and countless brilliant beams of light shot towards it like a catastrophe of the heavenly path. They not only destroyed King Tiandao's flesh, they even destroyed his soul, giving him no chance of survival. King Tiandao, the leader of the Dali dynasty's army, had fallen. He had been killed in the grand palace of the Dali dynasty. Moreover, the one who had killed him had once been the imperial advisor for the dynasty. They had once been the two most important people below Emperor Li in the Dali dynasty. The imperial advisor was responsible for internal matters, and King Tiandao was responsible for external affairs. Now, the imperial advisor had slain King Tiandao. This scene was incredibly shocking for the cultivators of the Dali dynasty. Even outside the palace, countless people were watching the battle. When they saw the imperial advisor kill King Tiandao, their hearts trembled as well. The imperial advisor came a series of murmurs and shouts. The voices built up into a storm of noise that flowed in all directions. The imperial advisor may have been in prison, but he was still a prestigious figure. Many people still remembered him, especially here in the imperial city. The people within the palace were the same. He had trained many of them. Everyone had once believed in him. Everyone had once respected him. However, he had been imprisoned because of Yi Futian. That incident had had a huge effect on the Dali dynasty. The battle in which Yin Yuan and the others had left had probably been because of this. The imperial advisor looked around at the people outside the palace. Everyone was watching him. Their whispers reached his ears. He said, "My residence was destroyed several years ago. Because of the order that Emperor Li just gave, I no longer owe the Dali dynasty anything." Everyone was speechless. Of course, he did not owe the Dali dynasty. He had served them faithfully, but had been imprisoned because of what Li Yao had done. These past few years, he had punished himself. He had still been repaying the emperor's grace. But Emperor Li had just used him to threaten Yi Futian, and had even asked Yi Futian to die in his place. He no longer owed Emperor Li or the Dali dynasty anything. This was a new life for the imperial advisor. He was no longer the same person that he had been. He was no longer the imperial advisor for the Dali dynasty. Boom! Up in the sky, A terrible power swept out, covering the palace and enveloping everyone within it. Everyone's hearts trembled. They could naturally feel it. It was a Runhuang-level force, a pressure that had come from Emperor Li. He had already prepared his method of killing Yi Futian, for when he agreed to his condition. Once Yi Futian died, the rest of his army would shatter. But he had never thought that the imperial advisor would regain his power, and even transcend his limits. He had slain King Tiandao. Was the outcome of the war between him and Emperor Xiaonao? There was no suspense at all. Destructive attacks fell from the sky. Everyone knew that it was the battle between Emperor Li and Emperor Xia happening high up in the air. But at that moment, it seemed that Li Yao was trying to affect the battle below with his power. His will was falling. The Peacock Emperor looked up into the sky. Emperor Li, since you asked me to witness this, I have witnessed it. You made Yi Futian promise you, and he did so. You lost your bet. Are you trying to meddle in the outcome? 9-colored light shone from his body. He spread his feathers, covering the sky and blocking the falling power, separating it from the battle below. The Peacock Emperor was taking a stand. The people of the Dali dynasty went pale. The tables had turned completely in a single instant. It had been in the instant when the imperial advisor had come back into his power. This was your choice, Emperor Li, came a cold voice that boomed through the air. Everyone looked at Yi Futian standing there despite his grave wound. He had suffered 3 attacks from a Nirvana-level ritual implement, and yet he was still alive. And he could still stand. Kill Chao Kong, came a cold voice. Chao Kong had been taken, and had lost his ability to fight. He trembled with fear, and went pale when he heard Yi Futian. The cultivators of the Chao clan looked shocked as well. Wu Yong stretched out his hand, and slammed his fist down on Chao Kong's head with flames of the Wei in his fist. His hand suddenly turned into a flaming fist. No! There was an intense look of fear on Chao Kong's face. Your Majesty, he shouted. Now only Emperor Li could save him. Boom! The flaming fist slammed down, and the terrifying flames of the Wei entered Chao Kong's mind, making him scream miserably. The flames burned his body. An incredibly powerful and talented figure of the Dali dynasty had come to such a miserable end. Yi Futian looked up at the imperial advisor and said, Teacher, the Prince Regent always tried to destroy your residence. Kill him. The Prince Regent had been a part of many things in the past. It could be said that he had even urged the imperial advisor to go to the Crimson Dragon realm and fight Yi Futian. If it had not been for him, perhaps none of this would have happened. A look of panic came over the Prince Regent's face when he heard this. He had witnessed how the imperial advisor had destroyed King Tiandao with his own eyes. He had crushed him, killing him so decisively that he had had no hope of escape. If the imperial advisor acted against him, his fate would be the same as King Tiandao's. He would be crushed. As he thought of this, he turned to flee. In this hopeless situation, he chose to flee rather than fight. Up in the air, the imperial advisor cast his gaze over him. He strode through the air, and appeared in front of the Prince Regent. The Prince Regent looked up, and saw the figure overhead. Brilliant light flashed, as if the power of the Heaven Great Path was falling upon him. Fall, spat the imperial advisor. When he said this, the divine power of the Heavenly Great Path transformed into many divine swords that shot down from the sky, piercing through the air. The Prince Regent roared, loud as a dragon, loud enough to shatter the heavens and the earth. He raised his fist to strike, slamming into the oncoming swords. He tried to break out from the encirclement of swords, but at that moment, a beam of light shot into his eye. Slice! Another sword fell from the sky. The Prince Regent tried to block it, but the brilliant divine sword pierced through the true dragon and ran through the Prince Regent's body from the head on down. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The Prince Regent's body was pierced in a flash. Terrible light shot out from him, and he gave a howling shriek. Under this brilliant light, his body was shattered into nothingness. The Prince Regent's body was pierced in a flash. Terrible light shot out from him, and he gave a howling shriek. Under this brilliant light, his body was shattered into nothingness. First it had been King Tiandao, and now the Prince Regent. Both of them had lost their lives. Including Chao Kong, the Dali dynasty had lost 3 of its top figures. Moreover, their former imperial advisor had slain 2 of them. Many of the people in the palace felt a deep sense of misery. Even the prince felt this way. Those who belonged to the Li imperial family harbored murderous intent, including King Tiandao's people and the Prince Regent's people. The Dali family had been opposed to the imperial advisor's residence, and were always trying to bring about the imperial advisor's downfall. In the past, you all participated in the siege of my residence, said the imperial advisor. Up in the sky, a divine array of the great path flashed. Ancient characters floated around him. Kill them. The imperial advisor's eyes were cold. When he said this, divine light fell everywhere, destroying everyone. No one could survive it. The people of the Dali dynasty had once thought that the imperial advisor was too kind. He knew many powerful techniques, but he did not use them. Otherwise, the Dali dynasty would have been able to destroy Emperor Xia's realm. There would have been no reason why they should have lost the battle of the empty realm. But the imperial advisor had always been very careful about the techniques that he used. The imperial family all thought that he was too calm and was not fierce enough towards their enemies. Now, the imperial advisor had finally started to kill. But he had not killed the people from Emperor Xia's realm, but rather those of the Dali dynasty. He had given all his loyalty to the Dali dynasty, but even destroying his powers was still not enough. Emperor Li had still tried to control the imperial advisor's residence. And now, when the people of Emperor Xia's realm had come to save him, then Emperor Li had used his life as a way to threaten Yi Futian. He had asked Yi Futian to die in his place. Of course, this had made him completely hopeless. From now on, he owed the Dali dynasty nothing. He would no longer be their imperial advisor. And since he owed them nothing, it was time for payback. If the people of the Dali dynasty said that he was betraying them, then so be it. Qin Xiangang, came an angry voice from the sky. The world shook as terrifying destructive light fell. The imperial advisor looked up and stretched out a hand. He used the heavenly great path to block the falling destructive light. There was a loud noise as his fist was destroyed, but the imperial advisor was not harmed. Even Emperor Li's will could not kill him. Since you have already made your choice, Your Majesty, you have no right to be angry. The imperial advisor was looking into the sky. Qin Xiangang was his original name. Few people knew that. The people of the world were all used to calling him the imperial advisor. But Emperor Li naturally knew his true name. Emperor Li wanted to kill Yi Futian, and had done all he could to do so. This was his decision. At the moment that he had made the decision, nothing could be changed. Fate was set. Anger and regret would be meaningless. He did not regret letting Yi Futian go in the past. He did not regret destroying his own powers to give Yin Yuan and the others a chance to live. Now, he had begun slaughtering the people of the Dali dynasty. Even if the people of the world spurned him for it, he would still not regret it. This was his choice. Another attack fell, and many people were killed on the spot. Imperial advisor. At that moment, Li Xian stepped forward. He rose into the air and stood before the imperial advisor. He and Li Yao had once both been close to the imperial advisor and had desired to study under him. The Dali dynasty has treated you shamefully, but is this what you truly want? Asked Li Xian, imperial advisor. King Li and some others stepped forward as well. They all knew that as long as the demon peacock emperor was helping him block Emperor Li's attacks, then Emperor Xia's people would not even need to get involved to defeat them. None of them could stop the imperial advisor when he was like he was today. Imperial advisor. On the ground, some people were even kneeling. They looked up at the figure in tattered robes up in the sky and begged him for mercy. Seeing all those figures, the imperial advisor sighed inwardly. He had so much bitterness in his heart, but after he had spent so many years in the Dali dynasty and trained so many of their youths, and there were those among the princes who had done him no wrong, and in the past, Emperor Li had treated him well. Otherwise, he would not have always done his all for the Dali dynasty. He sighed inwardly again, then turned and walked towards Yi Futian. Yi Futian watched him come. "Let's go, teacher," he said with a smile. The Peacock Emperor had no quarrel with Emperor Li. He was shielding them from Emperor Li's madness. He would not really ally with Emperor Xia to kill Emperor Li. If they could kill him, that would be great. But what if they couldn't? Emperor Li would vent his rage by slaughtering the people of Emperor Xia's realm and the Demon Peacock Emperor's realm. Could Emperor Xia and the Peacock Emperor keep a constant watch on him? And even if they watched him, could they stop him? Thus they could not really destroy the Dali dynasty. And in principle, this battle between the three emperors had not broken any rules if it all ended here. This was a terrible defeat for the Dali dynasty. Emperor Li had displayed a fierce and decisive nature, but it had all been for the purpose of killing Yi Futian. But he did not dare to harden his heart and try and destroy them both together. The imperial advisor nodded. He walked up to Yi Futian, who had once had such a weak aura, and then returned to Emperor Xia's camp. Disperse the army, said Yi Futian. Throughout Emperor Xia's vast army, all the divisions began to disperse. None of the cultivators of the Dali dynasty dared to stop them. They had lost 3 of their great cultivators. Now they no longer had the imperial advisor, the prince regent, nor King Tiandao. They had lost a lot of their vitality. It would probably take a long time to recover, and they no longer had the resources to challenge Emperor Xia's realm. At the very least, they would be like this for a very long while. As for the future, up in the sky, the great battle was still raging. It seemed as if the sky would collapse and the earth would split. When the great army of Emperor Xia's realm had dispersed, Emperor Xia's voice rang out through the air. Do you still wish to continue, Emperor Li? As he said this, beams of destructive catastrophe light fell from the sky, and 2 figures floated down slowly. The Peacock Emperor returned to his original place and stood beside Kong Xian. Emperor Li swept a cold gaze over Emperor Xia. Then he looked and saw the situation that the Dali dynasty was in. In reality, he had already seen that before. How could he have imagined that the imperial advisor would break through his state of mind in a situation like this and advance to the next level? It seemed that he had already touché the gate to the Renhuang level. The imperial advisor was Yi Futian's only condition. He would not lead the great army in an attack. The army would disperse, and he had promised to forget this grudge. But what about now? Not only had the imperial advisor left, but he had also gone beyond the limits of his power. The Dali dynasty had lost 3 Nirvana-level cultivators. Other than that, his previous agreement with Yi Futian was not included in this. He might come back in the future. If Yi Futian reached a level where he could threaten him, he would certainly not let him go. The reason he had not brought slaughter to his men today was that he still had misgivings about facing a Renhuang-level emperor. Emperor Li turned and descended. He walked back towards the palace. It seemed as if he was calmly facing this tragic defeat. He did not give vent to his rage. He did not even say anything angry. This was the way things had ended, so doing any of that would have been meaningless. He had not lost this game before, and in this case, he did not think he had done anything wrong. He had lost to fate. He had bet that Yi Futian would not have the guts, so he had pressed him hard at every step. He had put forward his conditions, prepared to do whatever it took to kill Yi Futian. But the imperial advisor had recovered, and thus he had been badly beaten. But he had not lost to Yi Futian. Even though he had lost, he would not lose his temper and go on a rampage. He was at the Renhuang level, so his state of mind was better than that. But he had bet the Yi Futian would not risk that. But now it was all finished. Things had come to their end, and could not be changed. Now he should be thinking about the future. Emperor Xia knew that Emperor Li was merely threatening Yi Futian. In reality, he also would not give vent to his rage by going on a rampage. He would wait and see who backed down first. He looked up and nodded to the Peacock Emperor, and then the 2 of them left in different directions. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was as if they had never even come. Everything in the royal palace of Dali was in disorder. This was a day that the Dali dynasty would never forget. Throughout Emperor Li's city, countless people were standing there in shock, looking up at the disappearing figures. The famous imperial advisor was now far away. After what had happened, he had already been fated to leave the stage of the Dali dynasty's history, but he had still been in the royal palace of Dali. But now the Dali dynasty had lost him forever. He had brought glory to the dynasty. Even when he left, he would never be forgotten. Now what could the Dali dynasty use to fight Emperor Xiao's realm? They had lost the empty realm. And in the future, they would probably lose even more. Of course, other than the imperial advisor, there was one other name that the people of the Dali dynasty would never forget. Yi Futian. Everything had started with him. Of course, who could blame him? From the start, everything had been caused by Liao, the prince of the Dali dynasty. The man who had once thought he could crush as easily as an ant, and not only cost him his life, now he had taken away one of the most significant figures in the Dali dynasty. Who could have imagined it? If Liao was still alive, and had learned of today's battle, what would he have thought of it? In direct contrast to the Dali dynasty, Emperor Xiao's realm had experienced a glorious victory. 10 army divisions had set out and swept away all in their path. They had attacked the royal palace of the Dali dynasty and laid siege to it. They had brought the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty to Emperor Xiao's realm and killed 3 great figures of the Dali dynasty, including King Tiandao. Moreover, Emperor Xiao's realm had paid only a small price for this victory. This glorious victory sent great waves throughout Emperor Xiao's realm. From now on, the Dali dynasty would no longer be a threat to them. Yi Futian's fame grew even brighter. He eclipsed the princes of Emperor Xiao's realm, and even Princess Xia Qingyuan. Of course, as far as many people were concerned, Yi Futian and the princess were inseparable. This battle made more people think that the future ruler of Emperor Xiao's realm might be Yi Futian. Within Emperor Xiao's palace, the great army returned to their stations, and all the top figures who had gathered left. Yi Futian immediately shut himself away to heal. It would probably be a long time before he was fully recovered. In the palace courtyard, Yin Yuan, teacher Nanzhai, Mu Chunyang, Lu Chang, and Fei Xue stood before the imperial advisor. "Teacher," called Yin Yuan and the rest. They were all smiling, just as brightly and simply as they had in their youth. Fei Xue walked forward smiling. Tears were flowing down her cheeks. She took her father's hand and embraced him. "Father," she said. The imperial advisor hugged her gently, 1,000 feelings racing through his heart. It seemed as if he had been reborn. When Yin Yuan and the others saw this, their smiles grew even brighter. They sighed inwardly. Yi Futian had not lied to them. He had brought their teacher back. It had begun with him, and it had ended with him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.